Take one. Hi, my name's Katie. I own Anthousai Florals in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We are a boutique, art-forward floral design company and shop. And today I'm going to show you how to create a whimsical, artistic spring centerpiece. Spring is my favorite time of year for flowers. This is the beginning of local flower season here in Oklahoma, and we get all the exciting like sweet pea and bulbs and just like wispy varieties. So I'm going to show you how to design a centerpiece, a foam-free centerpiece using a pin frog and some chicken wire. Today we're going to be designing in one of my favorite vases ever, and we are going to be using a pin frog. This is what is used in ikebana floral arrangements, and just it really helps you because it's literally made of needles and the stems will stick straight in it. And I'm going to show you how we put a pin frog in. You're going to flip it over and you're going to use this like floral putty. Get it off. And just attach it to the bottom. You want to make sure not to like glob your floral tack like right in the center. Essentially you're putting it around the edge in an even layer, because if it's uneven then the water can get underneath it and pull the pin frog up. So I have it just right there, and then I'm putting it directly in the center of my vase, kind of giving it a little twist so it'll really hold on. So you should be able to even like pick up your vase with the pin frog afterwards. So set that. And then next I'm gonna add a layer of chicken wire. So I usually just cut a piece that's about twice the size of my vessel. And then I'm gonna trim it a little bit. And I'm gonna crunch it kind of in on itself. The trick with the chicken wire is you want to make sure that you don't have a small piece that's going to kind of like float around in there, but you don't want so much that you can't stick your stems in there. You should be touching like all the edges of your vase, kind of like this. And then I'm going to use some tape to secure my chicken wire into the bowl. So I'm using this green waterproof tape. Kind of just do an X pattern. This tape is great. I get it from my wholesaler, but you can get it from Amazon or any sort of craft store. So I just did like that. And then I'm going to use some clear waterproof tape to go around the rim and secure that green tape, because the worst thing is when you're designing and the tape pops off. So I just love to have extra layer around the rim. And then your bowl should look like that. Cool. So for flowers, I'm gonna start with my base flowers. This is gonna create like the most structure for my arrangement, because even though I have my chicken wire and my pin frog in here, if I start just like plugging things in, it's gonna feel a little shapeless and directionless. So I want to create a really pretty base shape. So I'm gonna start with this hyacinth. I love hyacinth this time of year. It smells so good. So this is really pretty like apricot hyacinth. So I'm gonna use this, tuck some of it low. And as I'm building out my arrangement, some of the stems are going directly into the pin frog and some of them are not, and that's fine. So I'm already kind of developing a shape, and I'm just going to kind of continue to use this hyacinth as my base. And I'm not too concerned concerned about covering my entire bowl with this hyacinth. I'm just starting to create a shape that I really like. I love to kind of create like a mountain, a valley, and a little bit of a lower mountain. I like to say like you'll have like a bird be able to fly through your arrangement. That helps create a little more of a whimsical, intentional shape. And then that way it doesn't feel too dome-like as well. So you'll notice also with these pieces, other than these like tall pieces, most of my blooms are kind of draping over the edge of my bowl. I want it to feel like it's spilling out, and we're gonna add a lot of height and whimsy with our other flowers. This is just gonna kind of help us. I don't want it to feel too stemmy at first, so I'm really concentrating a lot of those blooms on the bottom too. I'm gonna add some of this mimosa. It's so pretty. It's such a good option for if you want like a little bit of green in your arrangement, but you don't want your arrangement to feel green heavy. I feel like a lot of times when people think of like whimsical or artistic or garden inspired arrangements, they feel like you have to have a ton of greenery in it. But you'll notice we don't actually have many greens. So we love to rely on the shape of the flowers themselves, and then also rely on like a lot of dimension in our arrangements. So I'm just continuing to kind of build out that shape and that base. You'll notice that before I even put a stem in my vase, I'm gonna strip any greens off with my hands. That's because I don't want any greens or flowers to actually go in the water, because that can create bacteria to grow and your flower arrangement to die faster. So anything that might be below the water line, I cut or strip off with my hands. So I'm just continuing to kind of follow the shape that I'm creating with my hyacinth. The mimosa is so cute too because the yellow blooms are just so happy. Your base layer is definitely the most important. I feel like if you're gonna be frustrated with your arrangement, it's because you didn't either have a strong enough base to support your other stems, or the shape just kind of got lost at the beginning. So being really intentional with this base shape. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more mimosa. You'll notice also when I design, I will hold up the stems a lot and kind of like measure them to decide the placement of them before I cut them. It's always better to cut, like do a small cut and have to pull your stems back out. So I want to add like a little bit of fun height with this mimosa so it doesn't feel like all my mimosa's too low. Cute. Okay, I'm gonna continue to build out my base. You notice that this arrangement is super pretty as is. You can imagine a world where we just have more hyacinth and mimosa and it would be gorgeous. So that's the goal, is our base shape is something that we really love. There's still a lot of dimension going on here. I was very intentional with every single stem that I put in my arrangement. There's a lot of layers even. We have some pieces tucked in super low, some kind of coming out at you a little bit more. I wanna make sure none of my flowers are like creating a wall. So that's why I'll take like little pieces and tuck them low. And that's why I also encourage kind of that like mountain valley, shorter mountain look. So I'm gonna continue to build out my shape with this status. Status is great, and it's really nice because they have lots of little arms. I would never stick a piece with this many arms just straight into my arrangement. It would get really crunched, it would get lost. So the nice thing is you can just chop these arms up. Status is also really pretty because it's pretty from multiple angles. So we can have some high and we can have some low. I love texture in my arrangements. I feel like, especially since I don't rely on greenery to create that whimsical shape, then texture is so important. All right, so we've created a really fun base here. I'm gonna add some whimsy with some sweet pea. I'm trying to decide, do I go neutral or colorful? I don't know, they're both really fun. The purple is a really fun pop against the yellow. I love a good neutral arrangement, but I think we're gonna play with the purple today. So sometimes, since I've created some height with this texture already, and I have a little bit of a lower side here, I might use something like sweet pea to create more height on the opposite side. Sweet pea is amazing. It's the best this time of year for sure. And I'm also being mindful when I'm placing stems in, like you'll notice I just placed this one in, but it's the exact same height as this, and it creates kind of like a pigtail effect, which I want to avoid. So I'll make sure I'm trimming it so it's not that high, or I'll make sure I have a piece that's higher, so we're creating just different heights. I just don't want it to look too symmetrical. The pin frog is really good too for these more delicate stems. It helps hold them in place a little more. And sweet pea is so pretty from different angles. So I'm gonna create kind of a clustered moment. This arrangement would be really pretty if I sprinkled the sweet pea all around it, kind of like I was doing with all my other stems so far. But the only thing is it might look a little chaotic or a little less intentional, and I wanna create some moments that your eyes are really drawn to. So I'm really looking at the curve of the stems. If it has really pretty drape, it might be beautiful for draping off the side. Really letting the stems kind of speak to me about what angle they're gonna be prettiest. Oh yeah, the purple is so fun. So continuing to build out my sweet pea moment here. Sweet pea also is a great like line flower. It creates some height. You definitely want to keep in mind the different shapes of your flowers when you're designing, so you're not using only round or only star-shaped. So I'm always really mindful of different shapes. I mean, we have so many different shapes going on with all this texture, which is really fun. I might stop with that for now because we can always add more, but that is so fun. Already added so much interest. Yeah, you can see where the white would look really sweet, and it kind of just depends what direction you're going, but I love the purple, and I think it's gonna play off really nicely with some of our other flowers too. Okay, I'm excited. So for my focal flower, your focal is your larger, more statement bloom, and we're going to be using these really gorgeous, locally grown Labella Pak tulips. Love them so much. These are from a local farm. They're just wild. I mean, you could imagine this looks very similar to like a peony or a ranunculus. They're so beautiful. Even the greenery on them is really pretty, and I might keep some of the greens. But I love that they're this like muddy pink color with like kind of some purple hues, and there's like kind of these soft peachy pink moments that are gonna play off of the status. And then the purpley undertones are gonna play off of the sweet pea too. So I'm just being really intentional about my colors. So the good thing about these, it's not like using a rose where the rose is really only pretty from the front. This is so pretty from different angles. So I can have this tulip kind of facing me different directions in my arrangement and at different heights too. So I'm cutting it, I might be stripping any greens off that I don't wanna go in the water. And I'm gonna tuck some of them low in my arrangement and have some of them a little bit higher too. Painting. I feel like when flowers look like they're not real, these are so perfect. So I did a cluster of 3. I love to work in odd numbers, or the concept of the golden ratio is working in triangles. So you'll notice I kind of created a triangle shape here with my tulips, but I also have them at different visual planes. So one's tucked in a little bit lower, and then the others are kind of coming out at you at different angles. So a lot of times if you're stuck on where to put your flowers, definitely clustering is super impactful, but also kind of working in triangle shapes is a really good rule of thumb. But you learn the rules to break the rules, but that's just like a really easy way to do it. And I tend to do less focals in an arrangement that I want to feel really textural and airy and dynamic. So if you want an arrangement to feel really lush and full, you might do a lot more focals. We just tend to love a texture heavy design. So I'm only gonna do 3 at this moment. I might add in more, but I'm gonna turn my arrangement and kind of mirror what I did on the front, just in the back. because the centerpiece is two-sided, let's say it was for the center of your table. One fun fact about tulips too is they continue to grow once they are in water. I think they grow like an inch a day. So sometimes you'll put your tulips in and they'll be perfect, and then the next day they'll be all like crazy and wonky. That's just how they are. So you could even, if this was for a special event, you could even wait to put your tulips in. I'm gonna probably use some of these tulips to tuck a little bit lower, kind of in the center too. I love, again, even though we're working a little more on the sides of our arrangements, because that's where they're gonna be mainly seen, it's still gonna be on a table where people are gonna walk by and see it from the top. So I don't want my top to look ugly, but I want it to be like this little discovery of like, oh, there's like a flower tucked in here, tucked in here. So anything I'm putting like directly in the center, I'm tucking in lower typically. So. So springy already with the tulips this week. Okay, so this arrangement is already so fun, so lush. We could definitely stop here if we wanted to, but I'm gonna add in a few smaller flowers that are also floaty and textural. So this time of year, there is fritillaria. It is a bulb flower. It is gorgeous. It comes in a few different colors. So we're using kind of this like yellow purple variety, which really plays off of the color scheme we already have it going here. And then this checkered variety, which is just wild to me that it grows in little purple checkers. So I'm gonna do, since we have a really heavy like sweet pea and tulip moment over here, I'm gonna layer in a lot of fritillaria and of both varieties over here. Fritillaria is really nice because again, it's so pretty from different angles. So we can have it draping off the side, really high and floaty. We're gonna do a little bit of both. I feel like you can never have enough floaties. And you'll notice this arrangement is already so fun and dynamic, and we have very few actual flowers in here, what you might consider a flower. It's mainly just like really textural flowers, but it's so impactful and artful. So I am gonna build out, starting with my kind of yellowish gold fritillaria. Sometimes you can take the greens off. It's kind of fun to leave them on, just because the greens themselves are really pretty. And I love having them face a bunch of different directions and tucking them in at different angles. I think sometimes there's this myth that every flower you put in an arrangement needs to face forward, and you'll notice that very few of mine do that. They're all kind of going different directions, and that's because we're working with varieties that look really beautiful from every angle. So again, I'm kind of working in that, like, some of my flowers are coming out at me, some are tucked in low, some are draping off the side. Just creating this really fun, playful moment with this fritillaria. I love how twisty the greens are. I love how textural this arrangement is. It's very playful but intentional. Again, you can imagine a world where I have put this fritillaria through the entire arrangement and it would look very pretty, but it wouldn't look as intentional. So by clustering our flowers, we're just being a little more thoughtful, and I feel like that really pays off. Okay, so now I'm gonna add in a little bit of this checkered fritillaria. I think just like a little moment to balance the purple from the other side. Just gonna pop a few in to kind of pull that purple. So, when I create arrangements, I am really thinking through a few different types and categories of flowers that I always want. So the first one would be my focal flower. That's your larger, more statement bloom. So we have the Labellopoc tulips. And I tend to do fewer focals because I don't want my arrangement to feel too cluttered or cramped. I want a lot of airiness and movement to come from the dimension in the arrangement. So we have our focals. Then we have our tall or our linear flowers, anything creating a line shape. So the sweet pea is amazing. We also have some of this mimosa creating line shape, and even the fritillaria are creating our line shapes. So we have our focal, our tall, then we have our small slash floaty flowers. So that is where the fritillaria is coming into play. That's anything that has a lot of movement. If this was outside and a breeze came, or if these flowers were in a bridal bouquet and the bride's walking down the aisle, anything that's gonna be dancy. So the small flowers are definitely the fritillaria, and then also the sweet pea too. So we have our focal, our tall, our small, floaty, and then we have our texture. There's so much texture in this arrangement and I love it. So we have our mimosa, which is this like kind of like yellow pom-pom looking stuff. And then even the hyacinth and this status is definitely our texture. Sweet pea could also be considered a texture. And then our base. So that's the flowers we put in at the very, very beginning to create the structure and the shape. And today we used the mimosa, the hyacinth, and the status to create our base.